What is going on, YouTube? This is Ask the Roots. So I'm going to review the debut album by Brotha Lynch. Basically, this project is called Season of the Siccness, the Resurrection, and it came out in the winter of 1995. Now, this is a pretty revolutionary album here. This is definitely one that helped kick off horrorcore, and this is kind of like a good amalgamation of like West Coast G-Funk that was kind of dominant throughout the mid 90s and early 90s and that type of stuff. Definitely has some tastes of like Bone Thugs in there, some Easy E in there, some folks like that, a little bit of Warren G, Snoop Dogg, some of those type cats. So I definitely like the amalgamation that kind of goes along with this. But this is just an overall stellar album. This is probably one of the more revolutionary and seminal albums of the 90s when it comes to rap music. Now, this one's kind of quieter, didn't have like massive hit singles in terms of radio fare, but it did a lot of damage, and just on the more underground tip and that type of stuff, this album just consecutively had appeal. And this is definitely, I think for a lot of folks, this is basically like a horrorcore classic, and I definitely see the quality of it. Now, back in the day, I was originally going to review this album back in like the winter or spring of 2016, but I just didn't get around to it. I had it like on my computer and that type of stuff, but I just didn't get around to it. But I wanted, it's just kind of been on the back burner for, yeah, about 7 or 8 years almost. But I just would have to kind of say it's one that I'm finally going to get to and just kind of say this is a whopping album. And I just would have to say, I look after this is kind of a short project, but I look after it's still pretty quality. I definitely see the exacting kind of quality of it, and it just basically is like a true horrorcore tour de force. This is definitely one, if you're getting started with horrorcore, this is a good one to start with, despite the fact that it's almost 30 years old. It doesn't really show its age that much. It really has some haunting kind of affairs on this. So yeah, if you like folks like Easy E and Bone Thugs and Harmony and some of that type of stuff. If you really enjoy songs by Bone Thugs like The Crossroads and First of the Month and E99, East 1999 and Mo Murda and some of the singles off of East 99 Eternal and songs like For the Love of Money and some of those type ones and just early mid 90s Easy E and some of that type of stuff and Snoop Dogg, Warren G. This is definitely some good amalgamations to kind of get because basically, yeah, I would have to say Brotha Lynch is like G Funk just within a horrorcore sense. That's a good concept. Basically, like if it were Snoop Dogg on his Murder Was the Case type vibes, just in like a whole album fair of that type of stuff. So it just really works extremely well as far as that kind of goes. But there were a couple of singles. Now, Wikipedia doesn't really list the singles of this project, but I look after just being able to say and such that I would have to say that I did look up some information. There are two singles from this, so it's pretty interesting to kind of get those. Those two singles are Rest and Piss, and then the other one is That's Real Gangsta. So I just would have to say about both of those, they're both pretty quality on here. The thing about it is, before we get to that, I'm going to say there's only 10 songs on here. There's 18 songs on this album, but there's 6 skits, and then there's 2 songs that are just kind of interlude songs that just kind of have some extra stuff. Like Real Lokes is just kind of like a song giving shout outs, and then Inhale with the Devil is just kind of like an interlude kind of outro song that it's actually pretty catchy. So I'm going to count that one, but I'm not going to count Real Lokes because all it is just Brotha Lynch just shouting out people. But yeah, to talk about the two singles on here, I'll talk about Rest in Piss first. So Rest in Piss is kind of a grim G-Funk Bone Thugs like bop. I would have to say it's some nice evening fare and it's a smoke a few cut definitely and it's some lazy late calmer. So I definitely like the feel of this particular song. This would have to say it's basically like a haunting kind of G-Funk kind of synthy type single that you would have gotten ripped from Bone Thugs fare back in 94, 95, back when Eazy-E was alive, that type stuff. Definitely like the appeal of this particular one. This is like some real Cali, vintage Cali, just in a horrorcore type sense. This is definitely pretty revolutionary. I just would have to say this is the sort of stuff that just should have been around for a lot longer. I mean, G Funk was only around like it makes me wonder what later Brotha Lynch albums are kind of like because this is just kind of like some real flash of lightning right here as far as that kind of goes. Just the appeal that this kind of song kind of has, just because it capitalized on G Funk, which was popular in the mid 90s, but then it also had some horrorcore, which was kind of new at the time. Apart from Esham and a few other cats like that, there weren't a ton of folks really doing it at that time. So this is pretty revolutionary. Definitely a good entry song by Brotha Lynch to get started with. This is just kind of like this is probably one of the more commercial like horrorcore songs. I would definitely have to say this is an easy kind of highlight when you think of like commercial horrorcore songs. This would be a good one to kind of start off with, definitely. Then the second single, which I didn't know till recently, which was a single, is That's Real Gangsta. This is a real boppish kind of one. This is a little bit more sluggish, definitely a kind of drowsy, kind of sleepy one, but this is kind of a sleepy, get slizzard cut, I would have to say. This vintage 90s G-Funk in like a ghoulish sense, and it's just a nice Cali cut. So this is definitely a good one here. That's Real Gangsta. Just really kind of feels like a swashed kind of one to kind of have some 40 ounces and just kind of be slizzard the whole day, that type of feel. This I mean, it can be summer music, but I just see it as any time of the year. So I see it as any time of the year, spring, autumn, winter, just some real good slosh kind of stuff to just kind of get cranked and that sort of concept. I do like some of these. I do appreciate the fact that Brotha Lynch gets tilted and that type of stuff. Definitely some smoke. There's definitely some O's just smoking and having 40 ounces on here, which is definitely pretty awesome. It's just kind of standard Cali fare, just in a good kind of drowsy swash kind of sense as far as that kind of goes. So both the singles are pretty wicked. And I definitely think both of these, if you do like, once again, if you do like 90s Bone Thugs and Eazy-E, this is definitely some good stuff to kind of have. Just some G-Funk horror, of course, that both the singles work. To talk about, so out of 12 songs on here, me counting Real Lokes and Inhale with the Devil, there's 9 songs I recommend out of those 12. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend those 9 songs and we'll talk about it. So the 9 songs I recommend would be Rest in Piss, Sick Made, That's Real Gangsta, Welcome to Your Own Death, Dead Man Walking, Liquor Sick, Return of the Baby, Season of Sickness, the title track, and then the outro, outerlude, kind of Inhale with the Devil. So talk about some of these, like Inhale with the Devil is a real clever concept where basically Brotha Lynch Hung is smoking with like a devil and like a demonic type dude on here. It's definitely a pretty clever concept. It's the sort of stuff that I would have expected from like Eazy-E or something like that. It's real kind of freakish. It's kind of a warped, kind of freakish smoke session too, and I would have to say with like a demonic feel, and it's just some good trippy stuff. So I definitely like this one. Good one to kind of get phased out. Just really has that good type of fare about it. So if you're looking for like a club hopper from Brotha Lynch Hung, he does have one of those on here. It's Return of the Baby. So this is kind of a mid-graze night venue, kind of glitzy synth hopper, I would have to say, and it has solid pizzazz about it, and it's just some nice evening commute. So this is definitely one. I was surprised by this just because horrorcore and nightclubs doesn't always mesh. It's not like it doesn't, but it's just kind of the concept of this is interesting. Kind of see that in like a 90s kind of affair as far as that kind of goes. So this is definitely really like the kind of mid-graze kind of feel of Return to the Baby. This is just kind of like a mid-tempo, mid-graze kind of hopper as far as that kind of goes for night venues. This kind of has some glitzy kind of flash about it that just works pretty damn well. Sick Made is another highlight on here. It reminds me of a haunting East 99 Eternal cut. It's a ghostly residential stroll and it has an everyday hop and bop type feel about it. So I would have to say about this one, this is really like a kind of ghoulish kind of cut as far as that kind of goes, but this is so regular and kind of everyday sound about it I just really liked about it. It's just really like a residential kind of stroll that you just kind of walk to the gas station, get some snacks, get like a 40 ounce, get like a fifth of Jim Beam, something like that. Just those kind of easy going type tunes, just for like some really kind of creeping, kind of haunting September, October type fare. This kind of feels like some scraggly outside kind of weather as far as that's kind of concerned. It's a real kind of grim and just kind of haunting overall type feel. This is definitely horrorcore at its finest in terms of some of that. It's just real. This one's kind of more everyday and work a day, but I like the concept about it. Just kind of getting this kind of laid back and just kind of overall appealing. This kind of this overall has some ghastly appeal about it that's pretty prevalent. So I definitely like the concept about that. Welcome to Your Death. Welcome to Your Own Death is a nice one. This is kind of an eerie, foggy evening stroll of a song, definitely. There's definitely some strolling songs on here for just some residential strolls. I definitely like this. Just some good appeal about that for just being out and about in a residential sense. This is a good smoke a bowl cut, I would have to say, and it's just a foreboding kind of overcast gem. So it definitely is just a foreboding kind of overcast gem. So I just would have to say about some of these, this is just kind of like a more kind of cloudy day kind of one that just kind of has like that grim kind of feel about it. This is no one to kind of pair up with Sick Made, even though Sick Made is a little bit more evening haze. I feel like Welcome to Your Own Death is just kind of like a bleary kind of day, crisp kind of cool weather autumn type day that just works extremely well for just some good smoke sessions and that type of stuff. Definitely like the appeal of that one. Dead Man Walking. Dead Man Walking is a low-key kind of grim bonanza. I would say it's some good neighborhood. It's some good neighborhood autumn stroll fare, and I would say it's a creeping but peppy kind of song. So I definitely like this one as far as that kind of goes. This one just kind of has like a boppish type of feel of it, just in like a horrorcore sense, where it kind of has some jive about it. Definitely kind of feels like an autumn stroll as far as that's kind of concerned. Just smoke session, or at least getting some goodies, some zigzags, that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. But just kind of in a more kind of peppy kind of feel about it. This one just has a little bit more kind of jovialness about it, just in a grim sense. So it's kind of horrorcore, but it does have some bounce about it that I did like. It's just kind of in a low key kind of sense, and just kind of more, just kind of, yeah, it's just like a little neighborhood jig as far as that's kind of concerned. Just a little bit of pep to your step, just kind of having a good time, but just still in that haunting kind of horrorcore type sense. It's a good one to kind of have for that. Probably could have been like a promotional single or something, would have definitely worked. Liquor Sick is another hit song. Liquor Sick is a highlighted one. This is a rave synth late nights fare. I would have to say it's a cross between G-funk and freakish horrorcore for some outings. This is just a good litty. This is just a good litty type of fare as far as that kind of goes. Just a highlighted one. Probably one of the most litty songs on this particular album, I would have to say. I feel like Return to the Baby is kind of one for like a mid-grades kind of night venue pop. But this is definitely one for just a little bit more ride out and kind of have like a rave kind of time. I feel like Liquor Sick is a great one to pair up with Rest and Piss. They're both pretty synth heavy ones that remind me of Bone Thugs and just kind of have like the more stepping out, just in a more crazed type of feel about it. I definitely feel like Liquor Sick is a highlighted one. Probably this is the one with the most ride out type of fare as far as that kind of goes with it. This is kind of the one where when you're getting ready to have like a rave Friday, Saturday, you're getting ready to have a rave Friday, Saturday night, something like that. This is the one that you would play at like 10 o'clock at night, 9:30, where things are getting ready to pop off in that sort of sense. It's not quite a club song, but it's definitely one leading up to it, just to have some rave energy and just really get ready to get crazed for tonight, I would have to say. So it's a good one. And then Season of the Siccness. Season of the Siccness, the title track is a pretty nice one on here. This is a lazy kind of evening haze of a song, I would have to say. It's a good malaise, kind of regular day commerce tune, definitely, and some catchy, straightforward type stuff. So I would have to say about this particular one, it just kind of reminds me of like some good day commerce. I would have to say this is probably like similar to Welcome to Your Own Death, even though Welcome to Your Own Death is kind of more overcast, kind of cloudy day type of feel. But this one definitely, where I feel like if Sick Made is kind of more late evening type of fare, I feel like Season of the Sickness is kind of like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock p.m., just the evening haze as the sunsets start to set in and that type of stuff. This really grim kind of feel about it, where it's just kind of an in between like some mellow G funk and some kind of lightly licked kind of horrorcore ticks about it, I would have to say. So it's just a good concept of kind of getting that. This was the Season of the Sickness, the title track is probably the most straightforward song on here. It's the least horror. Season of the Sickness, the title track is probably the least horrorcore prone of the songs on here. It's the most straightforward, but I do like the appeal of this one. This overall wraps up the rest of the production of this album and just hits extremely heavily. So to basically talk about, so that wraps up the songs I enjoy on here. So the 9 out of 12 songs I enjoyed. So talk about the songs I didn't enjoy on here, which is really only 2 songs, which is just Lope to the Brain and then Deep Down. So to talk about both these were kind of lengthier songs that I just didn't enjoy the production at all. And these were like the only real 2 duds on here. I felt like Deep Down was just a little bit too lengthy and just didn't have like a catchy enough production. It's the same thing with Lope to the Brain. That one just didn't quite have the appeal that I was looking for. Those were really like the only 2 duds that really happened on this particular project. But I just would have to say, so me basically liking 9 songs, and then like once again, Real Oaks is not really a song. It's just kind of him shouting out folks that he fucks with and that type of stuff. So I just would have to say, in some cases, I could say 9 out of 12 I enjoyed on here, but I would really almost say 9 out of 11. So me liking 9 out of 11 songs on here, I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 9.25 out of 10. It's really that enjoyable. This is like a really kind of almost perfect amalgamation of horrorcore and G-funk, and it was just revolutionary. It definitely kicked some things off, did a lot of damage, was a trailblazer of a project. It was just overall appealing and just had that great aesthetic that just kind of makes you want more music from folks like Bone Thugs and Eazy-E and Brotha Lynch Hung, some of those type folks. There's just not a ton of folks that were in Brotha Lynch's lane. The fact that he had the fact that he had 2 hit singles that just kind of had like that horrorcore kind of G-funk type sound is just an excellent kind of appeal that just is sorely missed out of the 90s, I would have to say. So it just had a lot of appeal about it. The social score, I'm going to go ahead and give a 9 out of 10 also, just because a lot of these songs were pretty appealing. This is pretty much like an entry. This is like a gateway kind of horrorcore project to start fucking with if you're new to horrorcore and want to see what it's about. This is definitely one I would recommend because it doesn't show its age. I mean, if you're not familiar with G-Funk and like the Snoop Dogg Doggy Style and Dr. Dre type sound as far as that kind of goes, maybe. I mean, but I would definitely have to say I think G-Funk is pretty ubiquitous at this point, so I would definitely have to say to fuck with it. It's a good gateway album. It's a great gateway album for horrorcore as far as that's kind of concerned. It's a seminal 90s album, probably one of the best rap albums of the 90s. I would have to say just did a lot of damage and was very impactful. It has 2 hit singles, Definitely recommend Rest in Piss and That's Real Gangsta. They both work extremely well and are just overall vastly appealing, is what I have to say. So in terms of the future, like Brotha Lynch has been kind of quiet these days. He's put out some collaboration albums and EPs and stuff like that. But I would have to say, supposedly he's working on Season of the Siccness too, which would be pretty awesome to kind of see in that type of stuff. But I just would have to say overall, we'll have to see what he does. But he actually does have plenty of projects, tons of projects and EPs and compilations and stuff like that. So we're going to get to some more of these.